Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Yevamot daf Chaf Aleph. We are going to begin on the bottom of Chaf Amud Beis, 2 lines to the bottom. Itmar, we learned Bias Kohen Gadol ba'almana. When it comes to a Kohen Gadol having relations with an almana, and Rashi says Yevimto, you have Yochanan Rabbi Lezer. So we have a machlokas. Chad Omer Eino Poteres Sarasa. One says it will not pater the tsara. Chad Omer Poteres Sarasa. And according to the other shita, he says, no, it does pater the tsarasa. Says Rashi, poteris osa v'es sarasa, that this bia will pater her in the tsara from chalitza, the saguli baget. And at that point now, a get can be given as we continue to chav aleph amud aleph. Ba'almana min hanasuin, so if we're talking about that this woman became an almana after Nisuin, she was already completely married, which means she had bia, and then her husband died. So kulam lo pligi, the lo patra in that situation, certainly it will not pater her, this bia. The ein asay doiches los asay vasay, because even though there is a mitzvah asay of yibum, but there is this issue of having tashmish with her, and it's a asay and a los asay. So therefore, because of that, it doesn't matter, even though he performed bia, which is the typical kinyan for yibum, but because it's an almanamin and a suin, so everyone holds that will not pater in this situation. However, key plig about almanamin and erison. What happens if her husband died, but she only had performed kedushin? So mandiyam poteres. Why do we say that the Kohen Gadol who had bia with her paters the tzara? Because aseh aseh v'daiches los aseh. Because an aseh can be daicha los aseh. Because she was potentially still a basula. However, mandi arme eno pateres lo aseh aseh v'daiches los aseh. No, we're not going to say an aseh is daicha los aseh. Why not? Kivan de efshe b'chalitza. Because as we mentioned before, at the end of yesterday's daf, that even though there is maybe generally a concept of an aseh daicha los aseh, however, if you're able to perform one without nevera, so it's better to do that. So she should have done chalitza. So meisvei v'im balu kanu tiyofta. So we said that if they had bia, that it's actually a good kinyan. And as we concluded also last daf, that's a tiyofta. It obviously shows that it is a kinyan, even though chalitza could have been done. So him to have nami tiyofta reish lakish. Well, this should be a tiyofta on reish lakish. Reish lakish, who said the famous concept of kol makam shiata maitze aseh v'lois aseh im ata yochel kaim shneim mutav. So he says, if you're able to be mekayim both of them, like here by doing chalitza, then that's what you're supposed to do. So this is a tiyofta on Reish Lakish. So I'm Reish Lakish kiyamino ana. When did I say this din heicha de mekayim mitzvah? That's only in the situation where you actually mekayim mitzvah. V'hacha chalitza b'makam yibam la mitzvahi. The truth is, yeah, fine, you can get out of it, but chalitza is not in place of yibum, and therefore it's like you did a mitzvah. It's just a way out of the mitzvah of yibum. So therefore, he would not say that chalitza is a situation where you're able to be mekayim the mitzvah, because you're just getting out of yibum, but yibum is the actual mitzvah here. So it's not a tiyofta on Reish Lakish. Omer Rava. Remez l'shnios min terminayin. So we said in our Mishnah that there's shnios la'rayos, which is a din d'Rabbanan, that they extended certain restrictions on additional relationships. So how do we know that there is at least a hint to this in the Torah? Shneimar, ki es kol ha'tawevos ha'el, also anshe aretz ha'el kashois, so machlal de'ika rakois. So the fact it says that there was this abomination, these, which they did, which were very difficult. So there's rakos, there's ones which are not as stringent or significant. Nonetheless, it's alluding to the fact that these are considered still to'evos, and therefore a person should still not engage in relationships with someone who's a shnios la'rayos. Umay ninhu shnios, again, that's what we're alluding to. So my mashma de ha'el lishna de kashahu. How do we know that word is implying that it's mashma, that it's something which is difficult? Ves eli haaretz Lakach, that the mighty ones of the land he took. So therefore the Ele is referring to someone who is the mighty ones or the strong ones, and therefore that's what it's alluding to, that these are the strong ones. Mashma, there's also others, which is referring to Shneos Harayos. So Lema Pligid Rav Levi. Perhaps this whole concept is going against the sheet of Rav Levi. Who's that? The Rav Levi, Kasha Oinshin Shel Midos, strong or difficult are the punishments Shel Midos, Yosim Oinshin Shel Arayos. So why is that? That we see that there's a stronger punishment on a person who's engaged in forbidden measures, even more than Arayos. Shazen Nemer Behen El, V'zen Nemer Behen Eile. So the fact that he mentions this is alluding to the fact that when it says Eile, that's when it's strong. Ha'el is not something which is strong. But we're saying that Ha'el is strong. So El Kasha, Ve'ele Kasha Me'el. The truth is, in our pasuk, the word Hatawevos Ha'el, that actually is also a very strong, harsh language. However, El is even stronger than that. It doesn't mean that Eile is strong and El is not. It just means in comparison. So Gabi Rice Nami Haksiv Eile, but understand by Arias it also says Eil, which is extremely cautious. So why are we saying it's Midos is stronger than Oinshin because it doesn't say the word Eile? It does say Eile. Hahu, no. Even though it does say Eile when it comes to Arayos, Hahu Lemiyuti Midos Mikares. That's coming to exclude a person who is engaged in forbidden midos, that individual will not be chayav kares. El mai chumraihu. So then, what's the chumra then? If in fact there's no din kares, the punishment's not so strong. And because hani efsher b'tshuva, hani lo efsher b'tshuva. Even a person who's engaged in arayos, they at least have the opportunity potentially to be able to do tshuva. There is a takana. However, when it comes to a person who is engaged in these forbidden measures, so he doesn't know who he fooled or who he didn't treat properly as far as business transactions are concerned in his cheating. So he'll never really be able to return that which he stole. And therefore that's why it's worse. Okay, let's stop here for 1 second. Question. Kasha Einchin Shel Midos, question 13. Yoiser Mishel Arayos. My Chumraihu de Midos, Madua Imkain in Einchin Mehen Karis Cholopochis Karayos. He says Chumrayu Dein Lehem Tshuva. However, the Ksiv Barayos Eila Mimatinin Karis Bemidos. So that's what it's coming to teach us. So because we have a miut in the pasuk, that's the reason why, that's question 13, that's the reason why we say that there is no din kares. However, it is strong because there's no possible opportunity to do tshuva. Yehuda Omer Mahacha, v'izein v'chiker tikin mishalim. Now when it comes to the handles, it's fixed up the various parables, mishalim harbe. There are numerous parables, which again is alluding to the fact that there's so much to learn from and to be able to examine when it comes to this chet. Ve'omer Ula, Omer Rabbi Lazar, Kodim Sheba Shlomo, Haisa Torah Daimil Kvifa. Before Shlomo came, the Torah was comparable to like a barrel. Shin lo oznaim. It's very hard to hold a barrel. It's easy to slip out of your hands. However, at Sheba Shlomo v'asa lo oznoyim. However, it's like Shlomo made a handle to be able to easier handle the barrel. That is the Torah. Says Rashi, Mishmer shlu tipo. So it's able to, you can hold on to it, it's not going to fall down. Hachanami alidei shnios misrachim in arayos. The idea of having these restrictions of arayos is so you'll distance yourself from the ones which are from the Torah. So the Chachamim, with great knowledge, decide which are the dini d'Rabbanan as gezeros in order that will not violate their rises. Rabbi Yishia Omer Mahacha, he derives it from the following pasuk. It says, Pira'ehu al tavrabo shetei mi'ela v'yavor. So it says to reject the wicked, al tavrabo shetei mi'ela v'avor. That if a person expands upon the edges, then you're not going to violate. But if you don't, then you will violate. So again, it's come to allude to this fact that if you're, as Rashi says, parehu, higilehu iser, if you're revealed Isser, Hoisavol, you add to a Kadesh Taverbo, so you don't violate it. So again, this is another hint that the Chachamim specifically institute these Dinei Rabbanan in order to protect us. What's a comparable? Well, Adam Mishamir Pardes, person who's guarding his vineyard, Mishamir Mibachutz, if he guards it from the outside, Kul Mishtamer, then everything's going to be protected. Mishamir Mifnim, if you stand in the inside, Shal Fanda Mishtamer, Shal Charben Mishtamer, you'll only be able to protect some of it, but not all of it. So therefore, we protect and guard a little bit outside, so this way, even though maybe right behind us is not even the Pardes entirely, but by doing that, we'll have a better view and a better opportunity to protect everything else. He says, the truth is, that which Rav Ashi said, this mashal is mistaken, because Hasam shalafanav miya mishtamer, hachi ilav shnios paga be'erba gufa. The truth is that it's not a complete mashal, because at least in the mashal, if you were standing inside, at least you can guard some of it. However, when it comes to if there was no shnios, then you're going to end up violating the Isser itself. Rav Kahana Omer Mahacha. The pasuk says Mishmartim es Mishmarti. Also Mishmarti. Again, you have to make protections for the protections. So you have to make sure to make sure that you're not going to violate Isser Deraisa. So we have extra protection. Amalei Abai Rabbi Yosef Haderaisa. Well, that's a pasuk Mideraisa. So how can we say that these are Dinei Derabanan? Now Deraisa Pirsha Rabbanan Kol Torah Pirsha Rabbanan. I call Torah Kula is Nami Pirsha Rabbanan El Rabbanan V'Kras Smach Bi Alma. Obviously, this pasuk is not saying that this is mamish the din. So then it would be a din deraisa, but it's coming to tell you it's an asmachta that the Chachamim have the ability to be able to make certain enactments. Tarabam. Mahim shnios. What are these shnios arayos in which we mentioned are considered to be isuri derabanan? So the Gemara now gives a list of women that a person is not allowed to marry or take. So aim imo, his mother's mother, says Rashi. Imo ksiva v'gazra banan al aim imo. Now, when it says imo, that this is actually gzera on your mother's mother. Kadei shelo yifga b'imoi, so that a person doesn't somehow stretch this to one's mother. V'gazra nabi b'aim aviv. They also made a gzera on the father's mother. Mishum aim imoi. V'afal gzera gzerahu. It sounds like gzera. Kinamakaman. Mishum de Tervayu Ima Rav de Karulhu. They're both called mother. So therefore, even though it seems like a gzera, but nonetheless we still say that it is not a gzera. Question 14. Madu gazra al aim aviv v'amai lo havi gzera. So we said in Rashi over here that the reason why we're geyser on aim aviv is because of aim imo, which aser because of the mother. So the mother is aser, so therefore we aser the mother's mother. Once we aser the mother's mother, we're going to aser the father's mother. We'll have gzera because both of them are called rav de karle. They're both called mother. So therefore, that is considered to be not an issue of gzera, not an issue of gzera. Okay, let's continue. That was question 14. Weiter. So we have aim imoy, the aim aviv, the ashes avi aviv, your father's wife. So this is like your grandfather's wife. The ashes avi imo, and your mother's father's wife. So again, this is not your parents, but this is your grandparents. The ashes, not just your grandparents' spouse. The ashes achi ha'av min ha'aim. So your father's brother's wife from your mother's side. V'eshes achi ha'aim min ha'av. And your mother's brother's wife from your father's side. V'kalas beno, and your son's daughter-in-law. V'kalas bito, and your daughter's daughter-in-law. So you have your daughter has a kid, a boy, and that boy got married, so that is your daughter's daughter-in-law. Mutter adam be'eshes chamiv be'eshes chagro ve'aser bevas chogro. So it says a person is allowed be'eshes chamav, which is your in-law's wife, the Ve'eshes choigro, and which is referring to your stepson's wife. V'aser b'vas choigro, but it's aser to take your stepson's daughter. The choigro mutter beishto ubito, and the stepchild is mutter beishto, in your wife, uvito, in the daughter. The eshes choigro omeres lo ani muteres lecha, and the eshes choigro, which we said is mutter, your stepson's wife, will say to ani muteres lecha, I'm mutter to you. Ubiti asur lecha, and my daughter is asur to you. Bas choigro. So, for the Gemara, what do you mean? Bas chogro, we're saying, is under the category here of is in the category over here of shnios. Bas chogro, if we're talking about your stepchild's daughter, deraisahi, dechsiv, es bas benav, es bas bita. It talks about your grandchildren. So mishum dekaboy misni seifa eshes chogro omeres lo ani muteres lecha ubiti asur lecha. So because in the Seif it says that the stepchild's wife will say, I am mutter to you, my daughter's usher to you, b'afagav. And even though the biti asur lecha b'deraisa, even though the daughter is actually usher b'deraisa, but the deal goes b'rabanan, so they did not make a zero when it came to me. So tanaration nami bas choigro. So yihachi eshes chamav nami, when it comes to your father-in-law's wife, Nami tema ani mutter lecha, I am mutter to you, this woman. Ubiti asur lecha, but my daughter is usher to you. Dehavi achos ishto, because it's my wife's sister. So our answer is hapsikale, halo psikale. So we don't go fine. So hapsikale, halo psikale, says Rashi. One is a clear-cut case, one's not. Says Rashi. Bas chaygro olam asurlo. When it comes to the stepchild's daughter, she is always usher to you. However, this other case is not psikale. Bas eshes chamiv, when it comes to bas eshes chamav, when it comes to your mother-in-law's wife's daughter, the asur lo mishum achos isha, she's usher to you because it's your wife's sister. But when your wife dies, you be mutter to her, because we said that sisters, there's only an isser of marrying her sister dafka while she's alive, but when she dies, not. So therefore, l'psikale, since it's not explicit and so clear, so therefore that's the reason why we don't mention these cases. Okay, weiter. Omer Rav arba nashim yesh lehen hefsek. There are 4 women that there is an interruption, and as we don't go above or below at a certain point to aser. Naked Rab Yadi Tlos, and Rav actually will only agree to 3 of these 4. Eishes Achia Aim Minaav. So one of them is your mother's brother's wife from your father's side. Eishes Achia Av Min Ha'aim, or your father's brother's wife from your mother's side. Vikalato, and also Vikalato and his daughter-in-law. Uziiri Moisev Av Eshes Avi Imo, and Zeir adds a 4th one, which is your mother's father's wife. Your mother's father's wife. Omer Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak v'simanech, and the simon to remember this, be'iloi the Rav, one up from Rav. So that's, says Rashi, v'siman hada mois hoisav Zeiri. Zeiri added the Eloi the Rav, because he added more. Who dor echad umala, 1 generation above, Mishnios the Rav. The Chashaveshis Achi Ha'im. He mentioned the mother's brother's wife. V'zu shel Zeiri dor echad umala. This is 1 generation above. Ramai tamul chashivle. So why does Rav not agree to Zeiri that this should also be in the category of these 4? Why does he exclude the case of the mother's father's wife? So the reason is Michalfale, be'eshes avi aviv, because if you're not confused by now, michalfe le be'eshes avi aviv, because you can be confused with your father's wife. And any time, because there's a potential of confusion, says Rashi, Di'i amrit, if you tell me, yesh lahefsek, that there is this break, and therefore at a certain point it doesn't aser, asal meimer be'eshes avi aviv, yesh lahefsek, you would maybe say the same thing when it comes to your father's wife, your grandfather's wife. V'hasam ikub oisam daros ishus deraisa. And there is an issue of deraisa. So because of that, he doesn't want to mention it because it'll cause confusion, because when it comes to, again, Eishes Avi Aviv, then it certainly is an issue. There's Iri Lahasam Shliach Va'azal. Over there, it's something which is common, says Rashi, Mishpachas Aviv, because after all, it comes from your father's side. Says Rashi, Adam Ragel Leilach V'Yodesh Yeshem Korbi Yosem Imo Hilchach Lo Machalfe. There's not an issue over here, because here we're talking about it's the father's side. So certainly we understand if it's your father's wife, that's going to be problematic, because we always, when we talk about Arias and things of that nature, we generally are focusing, and when it comes to Yibam, we're focusing on the father, the paternal, not the paternal. So therefore, a person's not going to make this mistake when it comes to Eishes Avi Imo, which is starts and originates from the mother's side. However, to the mother's side, person's, again, it's not something that the person is going to make a mistake. So again, it's a question whether or not it's possible that a person can be confuse the mother's father's wife to the father's wife. Okay. Kalato, when it comes to the daughter-in-law, as we continue to Chav Aleph Amid Beis, Deraisahi. Again, it's hard to understand why does it fall in this category. This is Din Deraisa. So after all, the pasuk says the Chsiv Ervis Kalascha Lo Segale. So Ema Kalas Beno. It means your son's daughter-in-law. You're right. Kalato, your daughter-in-law, is Din Deraisa. But when it comes to Kalas Beno, that is already not in the category of Deraisa. For Kalas Beno Yeshla Hefsik. V'hatanya, you tell me there's this break. V'hatanya kalaso erva kalos beno shnia. That when we say kalos erva and kalos beno is also a shnia. V'chena to omer bivno uven beno ad so kol daros. So l'chera we see that when it comes to your son's daughter-in-law, there is no hefsek. The first should be an isser. El, you're right. Ema kalos bito. Rather, we're talking about your daughter's daughter-in-law. That's where it's not a din deraisa. This was said by a great person, Rabbi Ami, well, Asr Kala Elman Mikala. He didn't answer a daughter-in-law except because of the daughter-in-law. The Amrulin, he said, Kaladoi, the stargazers, Milfana, Haviamina, I Gavaraba Havina, Asva Midaiti. If there was a Gavaraba, it could have been explained. I Mikroy Dardiki Havina, if in the future I will be someone who teaches students and teaches kids. Havina Ashli Ashim Rabbana the Asl Bekanista. So Hashta Savart Midaiti Lo Asr Kalat Bito El Mishum Kalas Beno. Now, I only answered Kalas Bito, the daughter's daughter-in-law, because of the issue of Kalas Benoi. And that's the whole idea of why it would be Asr. But again, it's Midaraisa, it's Kalas Beno. Kalas Bito is not an Issa Diraisa. It's only as Alsa Gezerah. Okay, so if you look at Rashi again, Armali Kaladoi, so the stargazers said, Milfana Haves Chacham Tieh. You're going to be wise or potentially a teacher of students. Lo asur kalos bito el mishum kalos benai. Amli abai lo rava asvelach, he explained. Gegon kalasa to be bar tzivoi. It's talking about the following situation, says Rashi, shahaisalo kalos habein, that there was this son who had a daughter-in-law, the kalos abbas. And there was also a daughter who had a daughter-in-law. Yasla Chalufi, and the problem is that it was very confusing between which one's Asa, which one's Mutter, so they're a geyser. Rapapa Eimer Kagan Kalasa to be Rapapa Bar Abba. It's referring to, again, this different family, but nonetheless, again, there was this question because of, if we're going to answer the son's daughter-in-law, so then how about the daughter's daughter-in-law? So therefore, it's possible you can make a mistake. Ravashi Omer, Mari bar Isaac. So the Gemara asked the following question. Second. Okay. What is the din if you have a mother's brother's wife from the mother's side? So it's maternal's. Your mother's maternal brother's wife. So what is the din in that situation? So do we say that if we're talking about a father's brother's wife from the mother's side, when we're talking about that the mother's brother's wife from your father's side, that at least in both of these situations, there's a sadav. The second case we just said, if it's your mother's brother's wife, but it's from your father's side, or that it starts off with your father's brother's wife, min ha'im, even though it's from your mother's side, but there is a tzad av. Who de gazer rabbanon? Maybe that's where the rabbanon will be geyser. In this situation, it's the mother's brother's wife, and it's maternal. So the question is, are we going to answer a mother's maternal brother's wife? Because there's no tzad av, so maybe we're not geyser. Maybe we're only geyser when there's at least some sad av. So Rav Safra, he gufa gzera v'nikim v'nigzer gzel gzera. It's a gzel gzera. So Rav atu what? Kuhu av gzel gzera ninu. Everything we mentioned in the previous daf is also gzel gzera l'chara. Imo ereva. We understand that a mother is an ereva. The aim imo shnia. So the gzera is on the mother's mother. The gozer al aim aviv mishum aim imo. And l'chayra, it's a gezer because we're being geyser on the father's mother because of your mother's mother. But the mother's mother is only a gezer in itself. The time of my kuhu debe ima rabati karle, as we saw in Rashi, that everyone they're all called the same thing. They're all called grandmother, and because they're both called grandmother, there's a good chance that person's going to get confused. And for that matter, Eishes aviv ereva. We know that taking your father's wife is an ereva. And because of that, Eishes avi aviv shnia. We said, therefore, taking your father's wife is a din d'Rabbanan, which, again, it's a din d'Rabbanan. But gozral Eishes avi imo mishum Eishes avi aviv. We said you can't even take your mother's father's wife because of the gezerah of taking your father's wife. But the question is, why? That's a gezerah. It's not a gezerah. Because the time of my kuhu debe abba Rabbi Karle, they're all called grandfather. So again, there's the potential for confusion, so it's really like one gezerah. Eishes achia av, mina av, ereva. Also, when it comes to a father's brother's wife, but from the father's side, there's your father's paternal brother's wife, that is an ereva. Eishes achia av, min ha'im, shnia. And therefore, we say, d'Rabbanan, you can't also take your father's brother's wife from your mother's side. That's a din d'Rabbanan. V'gazro eishes achi ha'im min ha'av mishum eishes achi ha'av min ha'im. So we're geyser in the situation of taking your mother's brother's wife from your father's side because of taking your father's brother's wife from your mother's side. Now, the time of my mishum deku debe doidi karilahu, because they're all called your uncle's. You're all called your uncle's wife. So the question goes back: what's the din when it comes to taking your mother's maternal brother's wife? Is that considered to be aser because we say it's a part of the gezerah, or do we say no? The only time we are strict is when at least there's some sad av. Over here, there's no sad av. So maybe it will goes Rabbanon. So Tashma, the Chiyas Rav Yehuda Bar Shela, Amr Rabba said in the West, Kol Shibanekeva Ereva. Anytime where there is some maternal element where there's an erva, bezachar gozer al ishto mishum shnia. So since his mother's sister is min ha'aim is aser deraisa, but it's his mother's sister. So therefore, because of that, his mother's brother's wife, even min ha'aim is going to be aser b'derabanan. That's what it's coming to tell you. That kolshem and nekeva erba, because even there's a link of nekeva over here, it's only nekeva because it's your mother's sister. But your mother's sister is Issa Deraisa, even though it's min ha'aim. So therefore, because that, we're going to be geyser in the situation of your mother's maternal brother's wife. The Amaravo Klolu, is that true? Chamoso erva. We know when it comes to your daughter-in-law, when it comes to your mother-in-law, that's an erva. Eishas chamiv muteris. But taking your in-law's wife, your father-in-law's wife is mutter. So bas chamoso erva, we said bas chamoso erva, eishas ben chamoso muteris. Right there, bas chamiv erva, eishas ben chamiv muteris. Chogarto erva, eishas choigru muteris. So you're not allowed to take your stepson. You can't take your stepdaughter, but she's an erva. But if it's your stepson's wife, then it's mutter. Bas chogarto erva, same thing. When it comes to your stepchild's daughter, is an erva. However, eishas ben choigru muteris. If it's your stepchild's son's wife, that's mutter. So we see a lot of times that we're not geyser ha to ha. The ha de Rabbi Yehuda bar Shila yisui mai, lavli yisui eishas achi ha'aim min ha'aim. It's coming to include this case that when it comes to eishas achi ha'aim min ha'aim, the chol shemin nekeva erva bezachar gozer ishnu mishum shnia. So maybe again that's what we're coming to at least include, that there is actually an isser in that situation. So ma'ishna hani ma'ishna ha. So why in these other situations is there no gzera, but over there is? So ha b'chad kedushin mikarav la, hani adiika trei kedushin lo mikarav lahu. So in other words, when it comes to, let's say, the father-in-law's wife or the father-in-law's son's wife, you need two kedushins to be related. So if you need two kedushins to be related, then that much we're not going to be geyser. If you only need one kedushin to be related, then that's where we're going to be geyser. Sholech le Rav Misharshia mitusnoyil Rav Papi. Denu Rabbeinu, we learned that Eishas Achi Avi, that when it comes to your father's father's brother's wife, as well as v'achos avi av, when it comes to your father's brother, mahu milomata erva milomata erva. So below is an erva. Milomala nami gazer bay. Do we say it's also above when it going up as well? Is that also true? O dilma ha iflig dorata, or do we say is polig dorata? Do we say that it's already distance, as Rashi, nisaracha kurva, and therefore it's not aser. Tashma mahin shnios v'loika chashavuhu b'hadayu. So what are these shnios that are not mentioned in this category? Says Rashi, as a brayso we'll see you saw it previously. So tan v'shir. No, maybe it's just excluding from the list. The fact that it's not in the list doesn't mean that it shouldn't be in the list. Maybe it just doesn't mention everything. So my shir shir shnios debei Rabbi Chia. It's coming to exclude the shniyos of Rabbi Chia that we're going to see later soon. A meimar, Rashi says, l'kaman b'shmaisen. A meimar achsher be'eshas achi avi aviv. That a meimar mater, the father's brother's wife, uva achos avi aviv, and his father's sister. Armule Rab Hillel Rav Ashi l'didrichaz shniyos. To me, I saw shniyos. Marberei Rabbanan uksvinan shitzrei isura. So I saw that there were 16 iser. My love tamani demasnisa v'shista be Rab Chia v'hanatarti hashisteri. So if you count them, you have 8 from the Mishnah, 6 from the Bei Rab Chia, and these 2. So l'taimeich shivtzri havyan da'ika eshes achi ha'em min ha'em. How about when it came to this case also? Your mother's brother's wife from your mother's side, de pashtin liisura. So why is that not included? So halukasha. Hanach, as we continue Chaf Mezim and Aleph, Hanach tardi de damin lahadadi. Since there's two which are very close to one another, says Rashi, the case of Eishes Achi Avi Ha'av, the case of your father's brother's wife, and Achos Avi Ha'av. So there's the whole issue is Shehin Sad Achva, says Rashi, that there is this connection of brotherhood from the father's side. So because of that, they're all considered like one. So therefore, even though it's not included, the truth is it doesn't need to mention that because they're really comparable. Vaha shitzturi. But so is written aser. If it was written for a heter, would you rely on it? Demar b'reinu Rabbana mi chasim alayhu, would he have signed on it? Hash denami nechsev l'yisura lamar b'reinu Rabbana chasim alayhu. Okay, let's look at a couple of questions. Question 6. Kohen habal erb of a hoyled mamzer himatamin loy karoyavav. We didn't do that. TA4. Elu gimel doiros asuros mishum shnios. What are the three dodos, uncles or aunts that are usher because of shnios? Beis mehem isa bebrais of echad havi boy begemara partial isura. So we mentioned this. We did. I got this question completely wrong. Eishes achia av min ha'em. So if it's your father's brother's wife from your mother's side, Eishes achia av min ha'av, which is your mother's brother's wife from your father's side. So there, as we mentioned, there's at least sad ha'av. And then we also asked her Eishes achia ha'em min ha'em, which was the Gemara's question, whether this also will be included, your mother's brother's wife from your mother's side, even though there's no sad av, but nonetheless, as we're stated that in the Brisa, that is considered to be we're pushed the shaila that it's l'isura. Adkan.